This is the process I use to 3D print logos. The software I use is all free versions. You can find links below. First, you're going to use Inkscape. You're going to do File, Import, and find that digital file that your logo's in, and click Open. From there, you can take these defaults, click and drag it to the center, so you have a good workspace there. We need to convert it to a bitmap first. So what you need to do is make sure it's selected by clicking on it. Go up to Path, and then Trace Bitmap. We have a 2-color image, so we need to make sure that we use the color option here. So select colors. These 2 boxes are best checked. You can click Update to make sure that it's going to trace properly, and click OK. Go ahead and close this window. Now the original file is behind where the new bitmap is. You can remove that, and then you can just move that back to the center here. From there, we need to save it as a plain SVG. We'll be using Fusion 360 next, and it requires it to be plain. So do File, Save As. Make sure you select Plain SVG as opposed to the Inkscape SVG. Name it to what you want and click Save. From there, we need to import it into Fusion 360, but first we need to create a base plate, which will be the base color. From here, you're going to select the plane you want to use, which I clicked top in the upper right and then selected the plane. From there, we're going to make a square. I'm using the center square, so you can select the center point and then set the dimensions, which is 100 by 100 here. From there, we need to extrude to give it depth. I chose 5 millimeters. It's a little bit overkill, so maybe 2 or 3 for your first test print. From there, we're going to actually import the SVG. So you can select it. Now select the plane that you want it to be on, which is the top of the base that we created. From there, it usually comes in upside down. You can use that tool there to rotate it. This tool will change the size, and then this one will move it. So I typically just eyeball the center. I've never really had bad results doing that. There's likely a better way to do it, but I am not professionally trained in Fusion 360. This is all self-taught. So typically eyeballing is good enough though. So here I'm moving it up, and once you get it where you want it, you're going to go ahead and click OK and then finish sketch. From there, we need to talk about selecting the area that you want to work on to extrude it. So we're going to give it depth, but you need to plan how you're going to do that, because we have 2 colors, and the way that 3D printers work, we're going to be switching out the filament. So we need to plan with white, red, and then black on top. And so we need to make sure these eyes are actually lower than the black layer that we're going to do. So the problem is, if you just select the eyes to work on them by themselves, the rest of the SVG disappears. So you need to make sure you select the whole SVG sketch that you created, and then make sure you're doing shift there. I kind of messed up and didn't do a shift, but once you have it all selected, you can do an extrude on it. And I'm doing, I think it was 3 millimeters, but what you do is then you subtract from the eyes so that you can have a different layer for that. So we'll go white on the base, then red on the eyes, and then black on top of everything else. From here, we need to export the 3D model that we have here into a slicer. So you need to select the body, make sure the whole body's selected, right click, and then do Save as Mesh. 3MF is what the Prusa slicer uses. So we're going to go ahead and name this 3MF file, and then that way we can export it into the Prusa slicer. Open up Prusa slicer and do File, Open. Find that 3MF file you just created, and there it is. So from here, we need to actually use the software to slice, and slicing really all it is just creating the code that the 3D printer uses for the head movement. So it's you can see all the different layers as it goes up, and using that, and you can actually see the tool path that it takes and the G code on the left there. What the important part is finding where these different layers actually start and where they end, and because we're going to tell it white is the beginning that we're going to use, then we're going to use that red, and then we're going to use black on top of it. I also set the brim here. It's kind of important for some of these squares so that you don't get kind of like peeling on the edges as it cools. So find the start of the layer of where the different color changes and press that plus that was next to it on the right there, and then find the next layer and press plus on there. So now here I'm kind of setting the colors so you can get a better idea of what it's going to look like at the end. You'll have to play with the different layer selections for colors so that you get a right kind of overlapping on all those. So you need to make sure that you press slicing again after, or slice now again afterwards, to kind of update those changes, and then from there you're good to go. So now we're going to export the G-code to the 3D printer. In Prusa, you just click the export G-code after you do a slice, save it, and you can now have the G-code. You can also, if you have it set up with Octoprint like I do, there's a print straight to the 3D printer option that you can have set up, which I typically use. Here's a time lapse of the print actually happening. This is sped up quite a bit, but it's created with Octoprint, which is, you can see that orange box at the top of the screen there. It's just a Raspberry Pi that actually can stream the G-code to the printer, and allows you, so you can do things like monitoring and controlling the printer remotely. Here you can actually see me changing out the filament for the different layers. As noted before, all the software was free that I used to create this, so hopefully it's been informative and